What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which saw the release of DC League of Super Pets from Warner Brothers, a film I don't really have all that much interest in going to see. Trailers really weren't doing it for me. We also had the second weekend numbers for the film Nope, which saw a pretty respectable 58% drop. However, because we don't have any actual international numbers yet for this movie, as his other films, Jordan Peele that is, other films made a roughly around $80 million for each of those films. Because we don't have that number, projecting this movie is going to be a little bit more difficult than in previous iterations and in previous predictions that I've made for other films. And so there's definitely going to be an asterisk next to this one as far as whether or not I think the film is going to be able to make its money back or not. We also continue to have the numbers for Thor Love and Thunder, Minions Rise of Gru, and Top Gun Maverick as well. So let's go ahead and dive into those numbers. So first off, we got DC League of Super Pets making $23 million in its opening weekend. And though you might hear people at Deadline try to say, hey, guess what? It's actually looking like it's pretty good, but maybe slowing down a little bit. As this says right here from Deadline, the expected summer slowdown is taking its expected course, with Warner Brothers animated film grossing $9.3 million on Friday for a $23 million opening, which is a solid result for a piece of original animation. Even though they say that, the big problem that I find with it is that when you go over to Box Office Pro, which, to be fair, Box Office Pro does use its own metrics for making various predictions on films, they were predicting the film to make $31.2 million, and so it is about a good $7-8 million off the mark. The actual range for the film they had to be $26 to $39 million, which makes me think that if you were to look at other industry so-called experts, that they probably would have been off with their projections as well, as we tend to see the Box Office Pro numbers at least have some iteration, some place in the span, or some place in the range that the industry experts will have. They have their own metrics that they add on to it as well. But the fact that the film came in at $23 million means the film is not performing nearly as well as what they had expected it to be. They're going to go ahead and try and say, oh, it's because of the summer slowdown. It's like, well, maybe it's also because of the film itself. I'm sure there's a bunch of people who saw the trailer for it and said, yeah, I don't know really who this is for. It might be for kids, but it doesn't really look all that compelling even for that, because if I'm going to bring my kids to go see a movie, I want to be entertained as well. And if I'm not entertained by the trailer that you're selling to me, okay, my kids might want to see it, but I'd rather go see funny little yellow minions instead, which seems to be the case for a huge portion of the movie-going population. The second weekend for Nope also came in at 58% hold from the previous week, making another $18.5 million, also underneath what it was projected to make, at least according to Box Office Pro, bringing its total domestic to 80.5. As I said, no international numbers, and so that is exactly where the film currently is at this point in time. And this film is definitely not performing nearly as well as the film Us did, Jordan Peele's last film, and it is not having the same kind of legs or same kind of holds as the first film from Jordan Peele ended up having as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this film ends up by the end of its run, especially when we start to get some international numbers, which will start happening in August. We got Thor Love and Thunder coming in at the number 3 spot, another $13 million, a 42% drop, starting to drop out of theaters as well. And we can finally say, everybody, that's right, it took 4 weeks. It took 4 weeks, but the Taika Waititi Ego Fest of Thor Love and Thunder has finally broken even. That's right, it's finally broken even. Not only has it just now made over $300 million domestically, but it has broken even. However, that news is easily overshadowed by the fact that the number 4 film of this week, Minions Rise of Gru, is outpacing and beating the total for Thor Love and Thunder. So kudos on you. You made your money back and you're starting to make some profit, but at what cost? Truly, at what cost? And for the John Campias out there that said, you can't say the film's box office isn't doing very well. Well, when the film has the potential to make less than Thor the Dark World, which is arguably one of the worst pre-modern era Marvel films, basically prior to Endgame, not counting Captain Marvel. If you were to ask most people, hey, what's one of the worst MCU films of all time? Most people would probably put, at least lower on their list, if not last, would be Thor the Dark World. So the fact that Thor the Dark World's $720+ million when adjusted for inflation is having a chance to have a higher number and be ending up a higher number than Thor Love and Thunder? Yeah. That's not a good sign. That's not a good thing. This box office is not doing as well as you would want it to, but hey, at least it's made its money back at this point. Minions Rise of Gru, as I mentioned, made another $10.8 million, continuing to have very strong holds after 5 weeks of release at $320 million domestically. As you can see the difference there between this film and Thor Love and Thunder. Also, of course, the international numbers is interesting to look at too, but in the end, this film is doing much better, actually. compared to Thor Love and Thunder. Rounding out the top 5 is Top Gun Maverick, which made another $8.2 million. Another stronghold 20% drop. 10 weeks of release, still out at over 3,000 screens. This is almost unheard of. There's not a film that I can really think of that had a similar type of trajectory where the opening was stronger than expected, but then it was the legs. It was the more and more people coming after the second weekend, third weekend, where you had almost that, I believe it was a record-setting drop of about maybe 13 to 15% from week 1 to week 2. Numbers that I've never seen as I've been covering the box office for the last few years. And the film is continuing to show itself to have a lot of strength. Again, another $8.2 million, also putting this film past $1.3 billion. So yes, not only was the domestic number able to pass up films like Star Wars: The Last Jedi, but now even the international total numbers, the entire worldwide number, is starting to creep up on The Last Jedi as well, and I would not be surprised if it ends up beating it when everything is said and done. Looking at the worldwide numbers for the films that we have mentioned so far, DC League of Super Pets, even though it has underperformed domestically, did make about $18.4 million internationally to bring up the total to $41.4. Still needs to make quite a bit of money in order to break even, though, as the budget is a lot higher than it probably should have been. The film Nope, $80.5 million. Again, not all that impressive when you look at it, but that is, of course, because it is currently lacking any and all international numbers. It is expected to open internationally, as you can see, very beginning of August in some countries, and then later in August in other countries as well. So films, areas like Japan and Mexico, this will be a delayed release there, and so it's going to be interesting to see whether it's going to be able to make up the money that it has not made so far, because at this point, it's looking like the film's going to lose money. However, because of the fact that it does not have those international numbers yet, it's still too early to tell at this point. What we can say is that the film, as far as its projections are concerned, is within its range. And so it's not in a Thor Love and Thunder territory where it's underperforming. It's performing just about as well as it needs to. It's not on the high end or on the low end, but it is right smack dab in the middle, according to the numbers charting. Thor Love and Thunder, on the other hand, $662 million. Good job. You broke even. Its broke even was around $625 million, but you are still well underperforming what you should have done. Again, this film should be somewhere between $476 and $323 domestically, but is only at $301, which goes to show you that even though the film is making some profit, it's going to be one of the worst performing MCU films of all time, or at the very least at the bottom of that list as far as profitability is concerned. Putting this up against some other films, for instance, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Remember how this film was able to make over $900+ million? Thor Ragnarok, adjusted for inflation, made over $869 million. So clearly you're seeing that, again, based on the pacing right now, it's looking like the film's going to end somewhere between $700 and $750 million by the end of its run, if I had to guess. I know some people think it's not going to hit $700 million. I do. I think it will. That is still not really all that impressive, especially when Minions has already done that by hitting $710 million. And also that Thor Love and Thunder, you would think, being in a franchise and a series where a lot of people liked Thor Ragnarok back in 2017, apparently aren't going to see this either because of bad word of mouth or because Thor Ragnarok had a lot of people going to see it multiple times, whereas Thor Love and Thunder doesn't seem to be having that same effect. If we compare these numbers to some of the other films that are currently out right now in the same point of release, you can currently see that the $301 million that it's been able to reach at this point, this is of course for Thor Love and Thunder, was already reached by the Minions film by its fourth Monday. So this just goes to show you how poorly this film is doing, especially when you see these bold numbers here. That means that the Minions film is outperforming not just Thor Love and Thunder, but is even outperforming on various days Thor Ragnarok's numbers, adjusted for inflation, and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which, again, I think is saying quite a bit. But regardless of all that, Thor Love and Thunder, not a box office success, not a box office hit. It is making some money. We could at least say that much, so it's not a flop, but to say it's a success, I think, is a bit of a stretch. Minions, on the other hand, is a huge success, $710 million there. Top Gun Maverick rounding out that top 5, $1.3 billion there. Again, well beyond the projections. This is what Marvel could only dream of having at this point in time. And one thing that I would love to be able to do, and let me go ahead and do this live, because we like to do things live sometimes here on the Geeks and Gamers channel, is let's go ahead and pull up The Last Jedi just so that we can see exactly where this film stands. Now, to be fair, as we always like to be fair here, we're going to adjust these numbers for inflation. So at the same point, or rather by the total end result for Star Wars The Last Jedi was $1.361 billion. Oh yeah, Yeah, this film definitely by the end of its run is going to have beaten out the adjusted for inflation numbers of The Last Jedi. So what we're seeing here is if you make a really good film that is for the fans, that fans can enjoy, guess what? They're going to go see it in droves, and it's going to be able to outperform films that should not even be in the same discussion. Top Gun Maverick, a film 30 years after the original, a film that I know I was excited for, and I had as my most anticipated movie of the year for 3 years in a row, but a lot of other people did not. Hey, turns out if you give people what they want, they'll go to see it. Whereas with Star Wars The Last Jedi, guess what? You saw about $700+ million not made by that film compared to the first film, Force Awakens. And when you compare it to the films like Thor Love and Thunder, again, if you look at the $900+ million of Doctor Strange, oh, where did all of that money go? Where did all of those people go? Apparently, they are not really interested in going to see this film in the same degree. What about for Thor Ragnarok? Where are those people as far as the Thor franchise is concerned? You seem to have lost quite a sizable amount of your fan base. So even though the Marvel stans might continue to show up for you, does not mean that everyone else is. Clearly, Marvel is losing a lot of fans, losing a lot of people. And even though I do personally think that the next film, Wakanda Forever, will probably be a much bigger domestic hit than anything else, and that's just based and compared to the original film and how well that one did. A lot of people just love saying Wakanda Forever, for instance. I think it's going to do very, very well amongst the African-American communities, especially here in the United States, but that is neither here nor there. And the last thing just to talk about is, of course, the numbers as they stand. The projections right now for the film Nope is going to be between $115 and $161 million for its end results. But remember, these are without any international numbers, and so those numbers will probably be beaten once the international numbers are brought in. At this point, it is projected to lose somewhere between $32 and $5 million. But as I said, I think that those international numbers, especially if it's able to get close to the 80 million that the other two Jordan Peele films have done, will likely be able to make up that deficit and be able to bring this film into the break-even territory. However, it will not be nearly as profitable as any of the other Jordan Peele films. So I think even this one is kind of a sign being shown to Jordan Peele and to the rest of Hollywood as well that, yeah, guess what? The things you say outside of your films and the things that you say very explicitly in your films, though not present in the film Nope, could end up hurting your future endeavors and hurting your future films. But those are the numbers as they stand. If you want to see where these films currently are as far as their general loss is concerned, you can check out my website, ombreviews.com, and go to the box office track and let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, lap that fire button on Odyssey. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.